Hey, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start now while I'm still trying to make sure that we can have access to everybody. You have joined the webinar for the CPUC's Environmental and Social Justice Action Plan Draft 2.0 review. There is a web address on the screen, cpuc.ca.gov/ESJ Action Plan, where you can find a copy of the draft plan. Just as a notice, this event is being recorded and will be posted online. I'm John Baker. I'm a local liaison with the CPUC's Business and Community Outreach Office. And just to outline our agenda really quick, right now we're in our opening. We're going to go until about 10:50. We're going to have an overview and then a walkthrough. We're going to take a little break, and then at 11 o'clock, we're going to come back for discussion, including a Q&A. This is your chance to offer your priorities as to what we should address in this upcoming plan, as well as ask questions about what interpretation. And then we're going to have about 10 minutes for where we're going to go from here on this. And then we're going to have questions and a wrap-up. So, in the interest of everyone's time, I'm going to hand it off to Monica Palmeira, who will guide us through today.
All right, good morning, everybody. It looks like we have a lot of our CPUC colleagues on, and hopefully we're able to get the public on the line. But like John said, we will be recording, so hopefully folks will be able to access all of this down the road. I will make my introduction shortly. Want to give time. We're super excited and lucky to have Commissioner Houck join us this morning to welcome us and to tee up the conversation for today. Commissioner Houck, happy to go ahead and lend you the floor and take it away.
Thank you, Monica. I just want to say good morning to everyone. Again, I'm Commissioner Darcy Houck, and I'm pleased to be providing the opening comments this morning and to see so many participants on the webinar today. Today's webinar is going to address, as has been discussed earlier, the draft version 2.0 of the Environmental Social Justice, or ESJ, Action Plan, which was released last week. This updated ESJ Action Plan represents lessons learned so far on implementing the first version of the ESJ Action Plan, and demonstrates a deeper and more coordinated commitment from the Commission to further our environmental and social justice goals within our work. The draft document includes updated and new action items that move the ball forward on ESJ principles. And in this webinar, CPUC staff will walk through some of these action items. We need your feedback on what may be missing from the plan and what we should be considering in the final version of the ESJ Action Plan 2.0. The Commission is currently working to advance many of the action items that you see in the draft update, including meaningful consultation with tribes, coordinating low-income programs to streamline eligibility, furthering engagement with ESJ communities in our safety work, and the items related to the affordability proceeding, where I'm the lead commissioner. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback today during this webinar and to receiving your comments via email. Your feedback, again, I can't underscore how important that is to ensuring that this plan is meaningful. I'd like to thank and recognize Commissioners Guzman Aceves and Rechtschaffen for their leadership in this important work, as well as our many staff for their contributions to the plan. The ESJ Action Plan is truly a product of Commission-wide coordination and efforts. I want to emphasize my personal commitment to advancing the goals in the plan, and that my fellow commissioners and Executive Director Peterson are also committed to these goals. We're including the goals of the ESJ Action Plan in the scope of our proceedings and striving to tackle these issues in a more meaningful way. And again, we need your support to do this, and we hope that you will continue to participate in the development process and implementation of this new version of the ESJ Action Plan. So I want to thank you very much for being here today. I know the event is being recorded, and I and my advisors will be reviewing it. I unfortunately had a conflict, so will not be able to be here for the rest of the morning. But again, thank everyone for their participation today.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hauk. Thank you for being with us and for your leadership on these issues. We're really lucky to have a lot of support from you and other commissioners and the executive director. Okay, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive in to the content. I want to introduce my colleague, Nicole Cropper from Office of the Commission. She and I work closely together along with many others on implementing this plan. And she's going to get us started with an overview of what this plan is to make sure everybody's up to speed on what we're talking about. So Nicole, I will throw up the slides and you can take it from here. Just give me 1 minute.
Fantastic. Thank you. And while you're getting the slides up, again, I'll just introduce myself. I am Nicole Cropper in the Office of the Commission. I do work closely with Monica and Commissioner advisors in Commissioner Rechtschaffen and Guzman Aceves' office on just making sure that, the Commission is implementing the plan in the, best way possible. So I am going to be giving you a brief overview kind of the current version of the plan and what our goals are. So Monica, if we could go to the next slide, please. Exactly. So about the plan, the Commission adopted the Environmental Social Justice Plan, and I'm going to use ESJ for ease, that in 2019. And it was really meant to be a living document, which outlines the Commission's commitment to equity, to ensuring equity in ESJ communities, which do include tribes. The original plan presented the Commission's 9 goals, which we do strive to achieve. And they include targets like making sure that we have resources dedicated to these communities to fund outreach and engagement efforts, to fund training, workforce development opportunities. The plan also includes goals for enforcement activities and resiliency. The plan is also structured with objectives that are right underneath those goals. And so there are more kind of concrete ways that we can track and measure our progress towards achieving those goals. And to that effect, there are about 95 discrete action items included underneath those objectives, which again kind of lay out specific actions that we're going to do to meet those goals. So Monica, if we could go to the next slide. And the next slide is just those 9 goals that I just referred to, and they're laid out here. So I'm not going to go through each of them individually. But like I said, they include, making sure that these communities are resilient, making sure that we are including economic opportunities and workforce opportunities in all of our proceedings. And the next slide. So part of the plan, I think a bit too far. Okay, so part of the plan is part of the implementation structure is we wanted to make sure that we had experts in each division who could both share learnings that we had in our smaller work groups and come back to the work group with questions that their colleagues had. And because we wanted this plan to be a real paradigm shift, it needed to include cross-commission collaboration. We all come to this work with different experiences and different levels of understanding on what environmental justice is and how to integrate it into our work. And so Monica was really integral in kind of developing this working group structure, which, like I said, does have representative in each industry. And then there's also representatives from a couple of our support divisions, such as ALJ, and then myself in the Office of the Commission. And then each liaison is really a conduit for like information sharing both ways, right? So both bringing problems and challenges from their divisions up to us, and then for us to kind of share best practices and, information from what we're hearing from our work back to the divisions. It's very important to arm, both our staff internally with the tools and the information that they need to be able to do this work effectively. All right, so the next slide. So now to where we are now. the plan does include a provision that it is updated. Is it every 2 years, Monica? I believe it's every 2 years. And so we're at our 2-year mark now. And so it was really important for us to capture as many ideas as possible in the process of updating this plan. And so in February, we hosted a workshop which had both panel discussions and breakout sessions over 2 days on key topics such as data needs, definitions, and enforcement activities. And I'm actually really excited to say that we had over 600 unique attendees who attended over those 2 days. We had a lot of really rich feedback, a lot of really good kind of media discussions. And so a lot of that information was included in the plan update. Okay, and so now I'm going to turn it back to Monica to talk about kind of the specific updates that are included in the 2.0 draft. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And hey, everybody, I'm not able to see all of the participants, but I'm hoping that folks from the public have been able to find a way to get in and join us for this morning's session as we actually dive through the depths of the plan, the draft plan. So yeah, my name is Monica Palmeira. I'm in the News and Outreach Office, and my main role here at the Commission is to coordinate the implementation of this plan. So I'm going to take the next little bit to walk y'all through what we've done with draft 2.0 and go through pretty thoroughly what you can see in the document. And then we have time later in the session to have a discussion about what may be missing, what other opportunities you might want to consider, and get your feedback in real time, as well as talk about some of our timeline. So in general, the changes between version 1.0, the original version that Nicole walked through, versus this draft version 2.0. So Nicole described the way the plan is structured. It's like a strategic plan. It's got goals, objectives, and action items, all kind of nested underneath. So for this draft version 2.0, all of the action items and objectives have been updated to reflect where we are today as a commission in terms of implementing principles of environmental and social justice in our work. The goals, those 9 main goals that Nicole flashed up earlier, those have remained the same, with the exception of one of the goals that pertains to workforce development. We have updated the language to read as it reads here on the slide, promote high road career paths and economic opportunity for residents of environmental and social justice communities. I'll talk a little more in a second about what some shifts we're making in our work related to workforce development, but the reason we restructured that goal is that we really wanted to emphasize high road, which talks about job access and job quality. Those are things we really wanted to emphasize in that goal, in the language of that goal. So that's why that's been updated. But the rest of the goals we're proposing to leave the same as we institutionalize their use in the commission in proceedings, programs, etc. So the other sort of change you might notice from between version 1.0 and version 2.0 is hopefully a more equitable distribution of action items across CPUC industry divisions. So we have, the way Nicole described, we have a liaison in every division at the PUC. We've been meeting and coordinating on a regular basis. And the hope is that the action items reflect that we have action items from all of our different divisions. You're going to see action items from rail safety division, from action items dealing with transportation networking companies and everything that we do, so that we are really tackling these issues equitably across the commission, and every division has a responsibility and made commitments towards furthering these goals. And then the other thing that we want to highlight for you all in draft version 2.0, we're not going to spend time walking through it in this webinar, but want to point y'all to the appendices. Now, why are we asking you to look at appendices? Normally, those are the things that you don't look at as much. But one of the pieces of feedback we heard, especially from CPUC staff, but also practitioners, is that they wanted to see the plan be more of a resource. So to be useful to folks as they work in the CPUC, to be able to reference and cite and support the furthering of ESJ principles in the work. So the appendices you'll see include, examples of how ESJ is being incorporated into proceedings. So you can actually see draft language that's been voted out already. A guide on definitions and terminology and eligibility criteria that's used to get at ESJ communities in different ways, so that you can have easy reference to those as you're either providing comments or testifying in CPUC efforts. And there's also other, key documents like our tribal consultation policy and our enforcement policy just at the ready for use as you consider ESJ issues in the work. So that's something we're really trying to do, again, is make sure that the resources are available for staff and stakeholders to really make this work happen. So that's kind of the high level of what the changes are. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk through each of the goals of the plan and highlight just some of the action items and objectives that we're really excited about that we're proposing for this version of the plan. I'll go through some of the goals a little faster and some of the goals I'll linger on more, but definitely encourage you to pull up the PDF and read through it as you can to get more information and details about what we're proposing to do in the next couple of years. So this first goal, which is related to equity and access in CPUC proceedings and process, this is one of the meatiest goals in the plan and one that we're really excited about some of the action items that are in there. So one, we're really hoping that in the blue text, these are the objectives, the updated objectives in the plan. We're really wanting to systematize the consideration of environmental and social justice priorities in our proceedings, but also in our implementation efforts in advice letters, resolutions, et cetera. In partnership with Administrative Law Judge Division, we're starting to see environmental and social justice issues scoped in at the scoping memo level and starting to get weaved throughout the proceeding process. We're really excited about that and really glad to see that forward progress. We want to build off of that and make sure we're being as systematic as possible in doing that kind of ESJ inclusion in proceedings. But like I said, also tackle all of our other processes and make sure that we're considering environmental and social justice issues in those. So that's something we're really excited and committed to looking through at in the next couple of years. Another thing that we are hoping to do in sort of systematic approaches is we're really hoping to do better coordination with environmental justice focused staff at regulated utilities. So meeting with you all, having conversations and thinking about shared priorities and how we can coordinate together on those. We're also hoping to do a lot of information sharing on environmental and social justice definitions. If you work on these issues, there's a million different definitions for disadvantaged community, environmental justice, low income, all of those things. And so we're hoping to create a catalog, which we start in this plan in one of the appendices, and really support staff in understanding what the purpose of different definitions is and how we might potentially align some definitions down the road. We also want to, I'm looking at objective 1.2, expand opportunities for access, so accessing CPUC processes. So two big things that we're hoping to take on in the next couple of years are first to conduct an evaluation of our intervenor compensation program, or ICOMP. If folks are practitioners here at the commission or have tried to participate in one of our proceedings, the intervenor compensation program is a way that provides compensation funding for you to be able to spend time advocating and commenting and whatnot. But we understand that there are barriers for community-based organizations in particular, organizations that represent disadvantaged communities from accessing those dollars. So we want to do an evaluation to really understand what's administrative burden and what's a legislative burden or statutory burden, so we can make that program a little more accessible for folks. We also are hoping to launch a pilot program for pilot grant program for community-based organizations. So trying to identify some funding where we can actually fund community-based organizations for community engagement efforts. That's something that we heard very loud and clear at our February workshop. We've heard in many, many proceedings, and that's something that we're really going to try to figure out in the next bit here, all under this goal of equity and access. All right, so moving forward to what we're hoping to do under the next couple of goals. Goal 2 has to do with access to clean energy resources. So this is a lot of what Energy Division is committing to doing or committed to doing moving forward. Action items related to outreach and engagement, really broadening and deepening engagement with ESJ communities early on in processes and proceedings to support clean energy programs and processes. There's a lot of really interesting action items on research efforts and studies that help understand impacts in ESJ communities. So definitely encourage folks to take a look at some of those. A lot of them have to do with our integrated resource planning proceeding and work, but some really good work happening to understand what impacts are of some of our decisions that we might make and how they impact environmental justice communities. A couple of other things to highlight is we're really trying to, and we've heard this from stakeholders, really thinking about mutual eligibility, coordination to be able to maximize impact in environmental and social justice communities, particularly when it comes to public purpose programs. So really trying to do our work internally to coordinate and communicate and leverage and all of those things, so that when we go to the public with exciting programs, we're not presenting additional burdens because we don't have our ducks in a row internally, or we have mismatched definitions or what it may be. So you'll see action items pertaining to that and work happening within proceedings and programs to try to get at that objective. We also want to continue investment in environmental and social justice communities. We do have a long track record of setting aside funds for disadvantaged communities and other kinds of impacted communities. We want to absolutely continue down that path and also consider where we can maximize that investment as much as possible. And then actually bumping back up to 2.4, continue to address ongoing impacts in ESJ communities in the energy space. So definitely there's like 20 action items under this goal, and really commend Energy Division for their leadership on these issues. All right. All right, so the goal 3 has to do with access to reliable and safe water, communications, and transportation services in environmental and social justice communities. And I definitely think we've really, our divisions, water, communications, and our consumer protection enforcement division have really stepped up to the plate with some exciting action items for this iteration of the plan. So we're talking about equitable clean transportation, so really looking at how we prioritize ESJ communities in our analyses of services provided by transportation networking companies, the Lyfts and Ubers of the world, and making sure folks have access, can be a part of those proceedings as well. So we hear from ESJ voices in those proceedings. In the water world, there's several action items in there from our water division that really look at customer assistance programs for low-income communities. And really, especially in light of recent drought, even worse drought than we've been dealing with for years, really looking at resiliency in communities related to water issues and how water consolidations play into that, how water consolidations affect environmental and social justice communities. So some action items pertaining to those things. Rail Safety Division as well, really tackling ESJ issues. One action item in particular that we're excited about is to look at how we can prioritize environmental and social justice communities in one of the funding programs that they have in rail safety that looks at rail crossing. So looking how we can make sure those dollars are invested in environmental and social justice communities. And then extending essential communication services to environmental and social justice communities. There's a lot of money coming through in the broadband space, so we want to make sure that those benefits are maximized for environmental justice communities. There's action items pertaining to our Lifeline program and several other action items that have to do with our public purpose programs within communications, how we can better coordinate those and make sure communities have good access to those. All right, I'm going to keep moving. And John or whoever else is moderating the chat, I can't see the chat or anything, so if I need to be just feel free to interrupt me if I need to, but I'm going to keep going here unless I hear otherwise. So goal 4, again, looking at climate resiliency. A couple of less action items here, but certainly some really meaningful ones here as we understand the importance of addressing resiliency in environmental and social justice communities. Really, I think with an emphasis in this new iteration of the plan on thinking about adaptive capacity of environmental and social justice communities. So trying to understand what the needs are of communities as we face the impacts of climate change and how that will impact our decisions related to investment and regulation in that category. I'm going to keep zipping through. I'm going to actually spend a little more time here because hopefully we have some, community-based organizations on the line, and this is something that is particularly relevant. Action items under Goal 5. So Goal 5 is really about outreach and public participation. How do we bring more people to our table? How do we make our work more accessible? And it's a challenge given that, we have an adjudicatory process, but we have some commitments that we're proposing to make in the plan to try to get at that. So first, we're hoping to improve our communication and really thinking about that with an environmental and social justice lens. So that includes, fact sheets and collateral materials, making sure they're translated appropriately, making sure we're communicating via email sufficiently, and making sure people have notice for things that are going on at the PUC in a more systematic way. Under 5.2, continuing to emphasize engagement with community-based organizations. This is something we hear loud and clear. We do have a lot of work happening both ourselves at the PUC as well as through the regulated utilities on partnerships with community-based organizations. The action items that you'll see in the draft plan have to do with us trying to really understand the depth and breadth of those partnerships. What do these partnerships look like, and how can we really deepen and enhance them, both with funding and with coordination, to make sure that communities on the ground are understanding and have access to what we're up to here at the PUC. So we're really excited to work in partnership with you on the line in deepening our work together. Additionally, we're trying to build more pathways and deepen our pathways for public participation. Certainly coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're virtual here. We want to, leverage whatever good has come of remote work and virtual engagement to continue to broaden our participation, and really trying to think about what can we do in a hybrid world that we can get the best of all worlds, both reach and depth, in working with folks within our proceedings and within our program. So you'll see action items related to best practices around hybrid engagement and how we can incorporate that into our meetings and workshops. And lastly, enhancing our engagement with particular ESJ communities. So, we're on the line here with our business and community outreach team. They are all over the state working with community-based organizations to build those relationships and make sure you all know what's going on here at the PUC. Some of the action items that we have in the plan under this objective have to do with particularly looking at our work with communities with access and functional needs, as well as tribal communities, and making sure that we're including those communities and those voices effectively in our work. So just spend a little more time on this goal, really trying to, again, really reach out and be proactive where we can, and try to do a better job, if you will, of communicating with folks in the public. All right, thanks for bearing with me as I go through these goals. Goal 6, it has to do with enforcement. And I'm really, really excited and really want to commend our enforcement divisions, the Consumer Protection Enforcement Division, the Safety Enforcement Division, for really stepping up to the plate with some exciting action items for this plan. Our work, we can pass all the rules in the world, but how we enforce them is really the measure of our success. And they have really stepped up in terms of wanting to look at things within environmental justice lanes in a more systematic and intentional way. So, so the action items that are under this goal include looking at all the data that we have from our consumer affairs branch, folks that are calling in, and trying to understand, what are the corollaries with environmental justice communities, any kind of geographic alignment, that kind of thing, so we can be more proactive in addressing issues in environmental justice communities. You'll also see, again, proactive action and analysis on issues like transportation and utility enforcement. So looking through our data to understand if there's redlining happening in transportation networking company services in environmental and social justice communities, and taking action if we're seeing that that's happening. We also are hoping to work on, our CPUC enforcement policy and applying an environmental justice lens in the implementation of that. And then lastly, maximizing opportunities within the utility audit work that we do. We are monitoring the utilities all the time, and how do we make sure we're, looking at environmental justice issues within the scope of those audits and consulting community as appropriate, to make sure we get a full picture of utility actions on the ground. So really exciting action items here, and again, commend those divisions for really stepping up to the plate on EJ issues. Almost there. Goal 7. So again, this is the one that we've restructured just a little bit to really focus on the high road. And again, when you think high road, I think what I've been, learned in doing this work is that you really want to think about job access and job quality here. So we at the PUC, we're not a workforce agency. It's not, we don't necessarily do workforce development on our own. But what we're really trying to do under the auspices of this goal is maximize our authority and jurisdiction where we can to promote good quality jobs in environmental and social justice communities. So the ways that we do that is by working with our partners at the Workforce Development Board, the State Workforce Development Board. They are actively providing us with expertise and recommendations for how we can scope these things into our work, again, to promote high quality jobs, high road jobs. We also want to do more education at the PUC with our staff on what high road careers mean and how we can do that within our work. And we also want to partner with utilities and our sister agencies to work on promoting high road careers and economic opportunity. And of course, continue the long legacy and strong legacy of our utility supplier diversity program, of which the business and community outreach team leads the implementation of. So really looking at diversity there, as well as for the companies, the regulated utilities themselves. So we're excited to see where that work goes in the next few years. All right, last two goals. So goal 8 has to do with training and staff development. I will say, I think one big lesson that we've learned in implementing this plan over the last 2 years is that we want to make sure that staff is equipped with knowledge and resources to be able to scope in environmental justice issues into their work effectively. And to do that, we need to invest in our staff on training and providing those resources. So under this goal, you'll see action items related to training on community engagement, meeting facilitation, environmental justice training. We've been doing a new employee session all on environmental justice and redlining in this plan, and we are planning to continue to do that every 6 months for every cohort of new employees. So as they come in the door, they know that environmental justice is a priority of this commission. So it's something we're really excited about, a big win from the last iteration of the plan, and something we're going to hope to continue, and continue to train the rest of the staff that's been here longer term, and making sure we're up to date on tools out there that we can use to support this work. We also are really wanting to be in alignment and solidarity with other efforts at the PUC that speak to justice issues more broadly. So we have colleagues that are working on a racial equity action plan right now. And so we are going to be, hoping to stay really aligned and support them in implementing that plan at the commission, as well as other efforts that we have across the commission related to social justice. We're definitely going to be looking to support them in those efforts. All right. And the last goal, which has to do with monitoring and evaluation. This has been something, I will be very honest, has been hard to do, which is to track how we're doing on impacts in environmental justice communities, investment in environmental justice communities in an aggregated way. So this is something we're really going to try to hone in on in this next iteration of the plan and its subsequent implementation. So we're hoping to create guidance for staff on metrics that they can use in their programs to get at both quantitative and qualitative metrics to evaluate environmental and social justice impacts and issues within their work. So how do we evaluate things like program satisfaction, comprehension, reach, engagement, all of those things, really giving staff the tools they need to be able to evaluate that effectively, and trying to do it as systematically as we can so we can get, again, more of an aggregated picture of how we're doing in environmental and social justice communities. It's a tall order, but we're really gonna try to spend some time on this and invest the time in making sure that we're monitoring carefully how we're doing on all of this. And beyond just metrics, we also want to promote feedback loops. How do we, beyond even just the proceeding process, how do we hear about things are going on the ground and be able to iterate and improve on an ongoing basis? So you'll see some action items related to that piece, the feedback loop piece. All right, and then this is my last slide before we take questions, and really appreciate everybody's patience as I walked through all of that. There's a lot. But want to just mention how we're dealing with tracking and accountability for all these action items and the plan in general. So Nicole mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that the plan has a 2-year timeline. We're proposing in this plan to have a 3-year timeline. The reason for that is that we have a lot of goals in there. There's, or a lot of objectives, a lot of action items, and we want to spend time doing the work, not just, quite frankly, working on a plan. We want to implement the plan. So we're proposing for this plan to be our roadmap for the next 3 years. So to kind of take us to about 2025. before we come back to you all with an updated plan. But at the midpoint, so in approximately 2023, we would do a status update, a status report, which we did in the last iteration of the plan, where we would go line by line on each action item and provide a written update of where we are implementing each plan or each item in the plan. We would publish that publicly and do a presentation for our commissioners, as well as the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group, which we have been continuing to keep updated regularly throughout this process. And we would really work with our ESJ liaisons, on a division by division basis to get those updates to work on the implementation, but then feed those updates up to us and out to you all, the public, so you can be assured that progress is being made on each of the items as we look at this 3-year time horizon. And then the last thing I'll say, we certainly have these action items. This is, what we're trying to commit to for the next couple of years. But I imagine there will be other things that will come up in an environmental and social justice perspective. And we can always add that into, a status report, and we can take on issues as they come. But these are the things that we're really, this is our to-do list for now on really trying to move the ball forward on these goals and objectives. So, well, now we're at our 5-minute break. So let me stop there. And I'm happy to answer any questions and even, talk a little bit more about any aspect of the plan folks would like. Thank you.
Sure. And for our attendees who are on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *3. I'm going to start with the first number. It would be a number with 213453. So let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, hi, this is Fabiola with the Center for Sustainable Energy and the Senior Equity Policy Manager. I just want to say that I think you've acknowledged that there's an access issue to the Webex. And I think, I've been unable to listen in, but I cannot access. It seems that the settings are set up just for CPUC staff to access the meeting. It's been asking me for a password, which I've never had an issue with before with Webex. And I tried to create a free account, and that's not working either. So I'm just calling this as a big kind of access issue, because I'm pretty sure that other members of the public are trying to call in or trying to see the slides. I couldn't see the slides posted on the website, and maybe they are, and I'm just looking at the wrong place. But I just wanted to see if this can be fixed before the rest of the meeting continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. John, yeah, any updates on that?
Yeah, it appears to be open on the Webex site. So we're trying to see if we can remove the password altogether so anyone can join in. We'll be working on that during the break. In the meantime, if you can email me, I'll make sure you get the slides so you can follow along. john.baker@cpuc.ca.gov. That's John with an H, .baker@cpuc.ca.gov.
It looks like a number of people have called in. There's about 117 attendees, and most of them are called in. So we will have this, of course. People can view the presentation as a recording, but a lot of people were able to call in.
We'll open up to our next caller, which is an 805-815 number. So go ahead.
Good morning. This is Gabriela Sandoval with the Utility Reform Network, and I had a similar comment to the previous commenter. I really think the PUC needs to address who the target audience for this webinar is, because if this is an internal webinar, then it's great that there will be a recording to go out externally. If your audience is the PUC or the commissioners on the line whose time you don't want to waste, that's great. But I think if your target audience includes the public, then you have to stop and continue this or reschedule it at a time when we can all actually be on the line and follow along the presentation. A recording is simply not good enough. This is a problem with equity work, is that it gets short shrift. And I think the PUC should be able to do better. So my question to you all is, who is your target audience for this webinar?
John, are you gonna, do you want to take that or am I gonna take that?
Sure. You are absolutely correct, Gabriella. Our target audience is CBOs and advocacy groups. And again, we're trying to troubleshoot the source. We don't know why. We may end up having to reschedule and offer this again, everyone's time permitting. It's a point well taken. And I do apologize for the technical issues, which we still have not been able to solve.
I am, John, I'm absolutely happy, ready, willing to reschedule this and make sure that the link is functioning, and you know, we can do this again another time. Maybe I don't know if you want to take the rest of the questions and then we can reschedule or something, but or we do this and then do the whole thing again.
I'm
yeah,
actually thinking in respect for the people who were able to get through, and I'm not sure what the defining factor was and who did and who didn't. But I say we do a full run through now, and we attempt to do a full run through again as soon as possible.
Okay.
Our next caller will be a 213453 number. I believe we've actually spoken to that person already, but actually, then our next caller will be a 323514 number, and you're unmuted.
Hi, I'm not sure if you're able to hear.
We can hear you.
Hi, this is Willie Burns. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I just keep on getting prompts as soon as I start talking. But my only question is whether is there like a red line that shows any changes in the plan, or I know we're going over it now, but I wasn't sure if there was any red line document.
Yeah, absolutely. So this draft is like kind of like a whole new draft, so it's not redlined from the original version. But what we will do, and I was gonna talk about it at the end, but maybe I should have talked about it now. So this is a draft that we're taking public comment on right now until November 19th. And then from there, we'll take comments and make revisions and then post a final. When we post that final, we will post a redlined and a clean version. So then you can at least see from draft to final what the changes were. But from version 1.0 to 2.0, it's kind of like a wholesale redo. So it's not redlined right now. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I'm sorry, when would the final, is there an expected date for the final? Okay.
Yeah, I have a chart that says to be determined. The hope would be in January. So the commission will actually vote on the adoption of this plan. So that's why we're really wanting to get feedback and make sure that this meets, you know, the needs of the public, which we'll hopefully also get more input on, you know, down the road in a makeup webinar. But, you know, the commission will vote on it. So we had hoped to take it before the end of the year, but it will probably be January when it will get voted on. So that's when a final version would be available.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Our next caller will be a 707787 number, and are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Will Abrams. Can you hear me?
Yes, Willie.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to reiterate, I think most members of the public are unable to join through Webex and didn't have the materials. Also, it seems that the phone line has some issues in terms of joining and getting in queue for questions. So I'm not sure that the public is really able to engage. And I think one of my comments that I wanted to put forward is I think that the first step in an environmental and social justice action plan, has to do with accessibility and specifically public participation. I'm engaged in a number of different proceedings through the Public Utilities Commission. I consistently put forward motions for public participation so that the public can engage in the various proceedings. Those public participation hearings are usually the first thing to get cut and are not incorporated into proceedings. So it makes it very hard for the public to engage. There are all sorts of regulated hoops for folks to join to become active parties. So really those public participation hearings are critically important for ensuring equity. I think the commission could stand to look at those public participation hearings and how they're structured to have them easier to be managed during those proceedings. It seems every proceeding has a expedited timeline. And so again, the public participation hearings are rarely accommodated within a proceeding, which is an issue. And I think that there are ways to do some things through surveys and other means as well that would allow that type of public participation. And my last point is around the utilities themselves. I think I have gotten directly feedback from utilities indicating that they are unsure of their role in the ESJ action plan. There's been a lot of sentiment that it does not apply to them. And so I think clarifying who the ESJ action plan applies to, I think would also be an important note for the commission.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Will, and others who are on the line who've already been asking questions, feedback. Just the fact that you're able to actually and willing to speak and weigh in despite these challenges we're having this morning, just it's not lost on us, and we really appreciate it. Really great point on the PPHs. I don't think we have anything specific on PPHs in the plan right now, so that's something we can take a look at. And your note about how things go so fast and what that means for the engagement process, that's really good point. So that's, I've noted that. And then also your note about utilities unsure of their role in the plan. That's another really good point, and I think we can maybe do a little work to clarify that. There is an item in there about coordinating more with utility staff who focus on ESJ related issues, and hopefully, some of that can unfold through that coordination. But how can we also address that in even just the publishing of this plan? We can think about. So appreciate that feedback.
Thank you. Our next caller will be a 734-709 number.
Hi, this is Pete Wywoody with the Reclaim Our Power Utility Justice Campaign. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Just adding my voice to Gabriella and Will and other people saying that the access issues to this event, but so many events that we work with community organizations, community of color, people with disabilities, fire survivors, and others. And it's just an incredibly challenging hurdle to get someone to be able to actually participate in these processes. So looking forward to this being rescheduled, looking forward to part of the ESJ action plan having a focus on access. Our folks with disabilities have an incredibly challenging time with the really cumbersome 1984 era public comment system at the CPUC meeting, needing to sit on the phone for 2 hours to wait for somebody to call your name and speak 15 seconds later. It's just arcane, and the amount of resources in this organization should be able to fix that pretty easily in a more streamlined way. I obviously don't have access to the materials for this meeting because of what everyone has just mentioned, but I do want to point to something that the previous speaker just noted about how the ESG action plan relates to utilities and making that explicit to them. Our experiences, if they are not mandated to do something, they will not do it, and that we see that as the role of a public institution like the CPUC, and so making very explicit and clear what the responsibilities are and the consequences for utilities blocking people out of public processes, not integrating justice metrics around public safety power shutoff, around the application of their wildfire mitigation plan practices, what neighborhoods are getting those and what neighborhoods are not, around access to materials and documents to prove whether the utility has been reasonable in their failures to keep our communities safe, and not just financial implications and consequences. We know that PG&E time and time again, and the other utilities also, are happy to throw tens of millions of dollars to make programs go away. What we'd like to see is these justice issues around access and disability justice, around racial and economic justice, around fire survivor justice, integrated into true transformational consequences for the utility. Connect this to the enhanced oversight and enforcement practices that CPUC has put into place. Connect this to true accountable pieces that will actually transform the utility, not just be another slap on the wrist that they'll write off as just shavings off of the billions of profit that they get off of burning down our homes and raising our rates. So thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to you rescheduling this and building better accessible practices for people to actually participate.
Thank you so much for that. And again, appreciate not just your patience, but everybody's grace on this call for even being willing to provide feedback in these circumstances. So thank you. Again, appreciate your point on how it relates to utilities, and again, just sort of putting another point on that, hearing that loud and clear. Fire survivor justice and enhanced oversight, also taking a note of that, and look forward to following up on how we might be able to include some of that. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, while we're working this out and while we work on a new schedule, if you want a copy of the slides so you can follow along for the rest of this meeting, please send me an email at john.baker@cpuc.ca.gov. Our next speaker is Augustus Clements. You are unmuted.
For having this. I am from the Public Advocate's Office. And I was just wondering, since there is this, there have been these technical difficulties and lack of participation, if you were considering changing the deadline for the comment period, just to make sure that there's adequate input from community members.
Seeing as this is happening in real time, admittedly, I've obviously not thought about it, but if folks feel that that's necessary, we can look at that, and especially considering seeing how soon we can get something else scheduled and get it out. We'll definitely take a look at that. But yeah, don't have a plan for that yet, admittedly.
Thank you. Our next caller is a 310-766 number. Please go ahead and unmute.
Hi, this is Jorge Rivera with Turn. I want to echo what everyone else is saying about, like rescheduling this meeting, and just for all the reasons that people said. But I wanted to ask around the ESJ plan and how it interacts with proceedings and commissioners. Like, I know that there's an intention for commissioners and decisions to be sort of founded and looking at the ESJ plan for guidance on making decisions, but how are the commissioners and their decisions, or not just the commissioners, but the ALJs being held accountable to ensuring that the ESJ plan is a factor in the decisions that they make?
Excellent question. So thus far, and so through our implementation thus far, what we've done, and what the Administrative Law Judge Division in particular has done, is educated the ALJs in particular. We're working on educating the whole commission, but ALJs in particular on the contents of this plan and the goals. And ALJs and commissioners are encouraged to scope the goals of the plan into their proceeding as they are applicable. And particularly the idea is to scope them in at the scoping memo level, such that, you know, it's inserted at the beginning and then the issues are able to be built out and weaved in throughout the entire proceeding process. Admittedly, right now that is happening on a case-by-case basis. So essentially, as the ALJs and the commissioners are scoping the commission, they insert language into their scoping memos that comes from the EJ plan. But what we're hoping to do in this next iteration of this plan, and there seems to be appetite for this, is try to find ways to make that more systematic. So potentially, you know, I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm definitely not a commissioner or anything, but in the same ways that we ask specific questions about safety, for example, at the top of proceedings, and it's pretty systematic, we're going to be trying to figure out ways we can do that on the environmental and social justice side, so that it's again more systematic. And then so that way, again, it's asked at the beginning, and then we also need to address it obviously on our internal end to make sure we're addressing the issues. But then we also need to populate the proceeding with stakeholders that can speak to these issues, because I think we've seen that even if we're scoping these things in, we may not be getting comments that are rich enough in experience on handling these issues or lived experience on the ground. So we're going to be trying to tackle this both and, particularly in this next iteration of this plan, so that accountability is there. Both systematically, we're taking it on internally to scope these things in, and the public is holding us accountable because they have experience on these issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a caller, 925-998 number, 925-998. Hold on, let me find you. I just lost you. Nine 925-988, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is James here with Monte Vista Group. We're based here in Sacramento, California, Northern California. And I just had a couple questions for the committee. Just in looking over the proposed ESJ 2.0 plan, does that create space for businesses that are developing energy renewable products to tap into resources? And then secondly, is this mostly a water division based goal, or does that include solar, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that. So the plan, so the way that the plan is structured, it's structured around broad goals and objectives related to environmental justice. So and then the action items kind of serve as a set of commitments and somewhat an accounting of actions that are being taken within the PUC that further those goals and objectives. So there are goals in there around our distributed energy action plan, for example, or our integrated resource planning proceeding. And just because it may not be a discrete action item related to the things that you're mentioning, that you're bringing up, because we're trying to be broad and systematic with the implementation and the scoping of the goals, the hope is that when those issues are taken on, environmental justice is considered in the sort of conversation proceeding process. So, and it does not apply just to the water division. It is a cross-commission document. So every division in the commission has action items attributed to them pretty much, and is sort of encouraged and prompted to fulfill the goals in the plan. So there's action items for energy division, water, communications, rail safety, our news and outreach office where I sit. We all have our assigned action items. So I hope that answer, I know that's not as specific as maybe an answer for your particular questions, but I think the goal is to try to hit at things upstream.
Yeah, no, that gives me a more broader understanding. And then again, just to follow up, in terms of funding for these types of projects, are private businesses that work with underserved, frail income communities, underserved areas, available for these developmental projects? Because quite frankly, we're working on a very a niche solar vehicle that's going to bring low-cost energy to communities that, other words, can afford solar panels or weatherization, et cetera. So just wanted to see if there was a timeline and if this is even the right avenue to go through to the ESJ.
Yeah, it might be good to follow up offline with the specifics of the work that you're doing. Most of the sort of eligibility is handled on a case-by-case basis, and from our environmental and social justice perspective, we try to encourage investments to happen on a focused in certain geographies. So I think as long as your business is focused on environmental and social justice communities, disadvantaged communities, there may be opportunities for you within either PUC or utility run programs. But maybe we could follow up offline and get a little more in the details.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. And like others, I'm not able to access the chat or anything like that. So would there be a best contact to maybe, further these discussions?
Yeah, you can email, my name is kind of long, so I'll give you the ESJ one because it's easier. If you email ESJ action plan at cpuc.ca.gov, I'll get your email and we can follow up.
Okay, sounds good. And
Monica,
I believe that's also on the, sorry.
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah, Steve is our water.
Monica, this is Steve St. Marie, and I am in the water division. But I would like to add to Monica's response that this document is the Environmental and Social Justice Action Plan. It is not actually a program in itself. So it is not a place where you can go to apply for grants or to work on a particular project. This is the framework that the CPUC will be using for, and after it is finally approved, of course, the framework that the CPUC will be using to establish and operate such programs in the future. So your goal, if you are working on a particular project, is to find the docket or to find the office or the people who are going to be using the services of firms like yours to make sure that environmental and social justice goals are served. But this isn't the place. This is where we get the sort of the ideas that are backing those projects.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I understand that it is a process too as well. So, but I just wanted to make sure that I was sort of pointing my arrow in the right direction, so to speak. So, and with that, I conclude my comments.
Thank you.
I still have a couple hands raised, but I think we may have already taken them. One is 734-709. And it looks good. Okay. We just have one hand that just came up. It is a.
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, this is phone number 908-4692.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, thank you for finally making it on the line. Unfortunately, this happened, and but I did want to make a comment on the goal 8. Oh wait, I got all distracted with all this craziness. I'm trying to log into the Webex. With the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and looking at goals, I'm very excited about the goals and that we could work on this plan. However, I would ask for an extension of the time period to make comments because I did want to use this time to interact during the presentation. So if I could be told as soon as possible when you guys have the next workshop, that would be important, or unless I could do that now with the goals, questions on the goals.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to go. Like, I think and this again, we haven't, this is happening on the fly. I mean, it might be, and I'm looking at emails coming in on the side. It could be that we reschedule this for exactly a week from today. So we push everything back a week potentially. And I have not confirmed this with anybody. I'll make sure everybody knows, but it could be that we make this up exactly 1 week from today, push the comments out about a week. But feel free to, Lulu, if you have comments now, feel free to just air them right now or mention them now.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Like I said, I got all distracted with my comments because of what was going on.
Of course,
but the comment was on the engagement part. Let me see, which was that goal? Was that goal 8? I lost my place in. And because I'm looking at the plan, there was the draft PUC ESJ. Is that the plan we're talking about, right?
That is the plan we're talking about.
Okay, so the goal enhancement, safety, consumer protections, 8. So, okay, it's goal 7. So to promote the high road career paths and economic opportunity for residents at ESJ, would that include programs that currently are in place, like training programs, like, I know that Proteos out here in the Central Valley in Fresno County, right? Proteos is a company that helps training and so forth and has something to do with that kind of a company be able to see how we could use this plan to support them to promote more of the environmental justice stuff?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that the idea is that we would scope in sort of parameters related to high road career paths or workforce development through a proceeding process that then directs certain kind of either metrics to be measured or certain apprenticeship programs to be used or whatever, or certain even wage requirements to be in place where it's appropriate. So I think the goal is to try to tackle it on the front end, sort of upstream. So yeah, sure. I mean, people could use it in an implementation basis to kind of support things they might want to do, but I think the approach might be we might have to tackle it further up the road to set requirements in place to then have the outcomes we might be looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so then my question would be, how could we engage young people, from high school levels? I understand that high schools right now are, at least here in the Central Valley, from my experiences, they have programs like technical schools, right? But now they're also using this VROP, which is like a program where they get to enhance their school experience with college prep kind of things, or technical fields, like over here in Palmeira Unified, they have a technical field for medical nursing program, right? So I don't know if this could be somehow, or how it would interface with the school districts to know about, to take advantage of our young people's knowledge too, and probably creativity in this process.
That's a great point. And would love to follow up more to kind of flesh out what that could look like. So thus far we've been leveraging the California Workforce Development Board for them to kind of let us know what kind of sort of apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs we should be linking to the work that we're doing on an ongoing basis. And there may be room for sort of different kinds of training programs. I think what I have understood has been done is, we certainly encourage a lot of workforce training, workforce development, but at this point, we really want to make sure it turns into high quality jobs is kind of the emphasis here. Yeah. So, but would love to think more about what those other, where we can bring those trainees in, young people, to your point, and get them on career paths that we have influence over to make sure those are good jobs.
And then my last question is, how are we leveraging or using in this plan technology? Because, when we, like I've been helping communities with solar panel installation fraud, right? So when we had to do and it was an environmental issue because they wanted to go solar to go green. However, the finance and the contracting was abusive and predatory at most. So how could we, when that happens, there was no structure, like technology structure, for them to be able to send in, or for you to receive the influx of the community's effective they were affected to deliver their pain or to deliver their complaint or whatever. I don't know how to say it, but how can we use software to create algorithm or to create a something where you guys could capture the data without having to be one person, because one person cannot take in 300 calls. I mean, I just went in on TV and talked about we're working on, and in 6 seconds when the interview came out on TV, I had 600 calls on my digital phone. And so, good thing I used my digital number and not my cell phone number, else I never would have been able to see the impact that had on the community. So I just want to see where and the goals, what part of the goals do we use technology to help us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, as demonstrated today and many days, technology can be a challenge. And we have IT staff and it's not for not wanting to be better on these things. It can be challenging I'm not trying to give ourselves any kind of cop out, but it can be hard in a government
We're
setting
all learning all this Zoom stuff, yeah.
and in order to
But
keep
this
up with technology and to have good systems in place despite our best efforts and wishes. But I do think we do have a whole consumer affairs branch that is able to take in calls, and they're not directly mentioned in the action plan in this regard, but I think I understand that they're looking at how they can improve their processes. Their data, like they have a whole database and whatnot. What we're I think understanding is that we want to tap into that database even more. Like there's a missed opportunity with the technology and databasing that we have today. So I think there's a little work we want to do to try to at least utilize what we do have at this point in an environmental justice context. And then of course, as we try to do more, technological interventions will be needed and we can take those on. Like there's internal conversations about GIS and how we can have better access to mapping to be able to do these kinds of things. But there's things that we have already that we're not even maximizing. So I think we're going to admittedly start there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the time and presentation.
Thank you.
Just in interest of getting everyone's time back on track, we have 2 more callers. We'll take those now, then we'll take our break and then continue on. There'll be another question session at the end. So our next caller will be 209-324. That's 209-324.
Oh, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, thank you. My name is Tom Helm. I'm the coordinator for the California Environmental Justice Coalition, as well as a social and environmental justice group in Stanislaus County called Valley Improvement Projects. And I just wanted to quickly comment that I had the same exact problems logging into the Webex meeting. And so I wasn't able to get on the call until almost a half an hour after it started. So just wanted to mention that. And then while I was on the call, I raised my hand at the very beginning, pressing *3, and then about halfway through the commenters, a prompt came on and said that I had been cleared from having my hand raised, so I had to do it again. So just a couple of technical things, but that obviously would need to be improved if this is going to be an outreach to community members, especially regarding environmental and social justice. I hadn't really gotten a chance to read through the documents yet. I just found out about this meeting a couple days ago and thought I would kind of attend and get an intro to the subject and then review the documents and give feedback a little later. So just wanted to let everybody know that I had the same problems as it sounds like most people did getting on. But I look forward to learning more, and especially if this is rescheduled and kind of joining from the beginning. Thank you.
Absolutely. Again, thank you. Just continue to iterate the thanks for patience. Yeah, if you want to email esjactionplan@cpuc.ca.gov with anything specific, feel free to at any point. But yeah, we'll make sure we're rescheduled and that folks get that notice. Yeah, please feel free to peruse the document, provide comments via email whenever you can. Thank you.
Am I muted again, or do I have to press something?
I can mute you. Next caller, 949-413. 949-413, go ahead. You're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Having some of the similar issues as the previous commenters. I also had my hand cleared a couple of times, just like the last caller. But this is Melanie Peck. I'm with the Energy Coalition. We're a statewide organization that designs and implements primarily energy efficiency programs and work quite a bit with environmental and social justice communities and very interested in contributing here. So I just want to, I have a comment and a question. And I really think the intent here is good, and I appreciate that you're trying to troubleshoot all of these access issues. And I just wanted to say, I think that, you know, moving forward, it's not just really technology issues, it's also not an equitable platform. And I think it really impacts the rollout and just unfortunately, unintentionally undermines your mission here. And I'm hoping that the method and medium for hosting these conversations can be reevaluated. So that's just a general comment. And regarding my question, there seems to be, which I'm very excited and pleased to see, prioritized a lot of emphasis on a feedback loop. And what I heard earlier, and I apologize because I'm not able to access the materials, and so this might have been covered in more detail on the slides, but I heard a lot of emphasis on working really collaboratively and hand in glove with utilities and across PUC staff. And I'm just really curious about where other program administrators and implementers are engaged in that feedback loop process as well. You know, where are the touch points? Where should we look for inclusion in this and within the feedback loop overall? What is the plan there? And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your point on method and medium. On this, and as we reschedule this, we'll be asking a lot of questions, but we'll definitely keep that in mind too. On the sort of program administrator and other folks that might be involved in sort of this coordination piece, I think the plan is a little bit higher level in that it sort of states, intentionality around like coordination and whatnot. So I think a lot will still be fleshed out in terms of the touch points question, the piece that you're mentioning. This is meant to be more of like the roadmap, the to-do list. But the point is well taken that we should at least be very clear about different kinds of folks we should engage in those coordination efforts, and at least maybe do a little more to name them so that intentionality is there. And as we set out to implement, it's clear that we want to involve all these different parties, not just necessarily utilities or community-based organizations. There's other actors in this space. So while we still try to keep this a little higher level and let the work flesh out over the next few years, we can try to clarify some certain points of coordination. So good note. I appreciate that note.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take one more caller, and then in the interest of getting everyone back on time, we will actually skip our 5-minute break so we can finish on time. I know a lot of people have another event after this, so we will take 415-997 number.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. This is Tad Gondai with the National Diversity Coalition. NDC has participated in a number of PUC proceedings for over 10 years now. We represent predominantly the low-income and minority communities. And NDC is a bit unique in that it's a coalition of dozens of different individual nonprofits that actually serve and work directly in grassroots communities, working directly with people. And so we try to bring their voices and their concerns before the commission. So we were very encouraged by what we saw in I think it's 1.2, talking about this effort to really engage more with community-based organizations. We've tried and pushed for years to try to get more access to utility decision makers, having them sit down with us, having them really consult us when they're trying to roll out or design programs that are meant to reach our constituents. And so it's good to see that the PUC itself understands the value of that community engagement and is trying to pursue it. I was just hoping we could get a little more detail or just information on what the ideas were, like the kind of the pilot program that was discussed or ways to try to engage more with CBOs. That would be really helpful to hear a little bit more about what the commission is thinking about. And if specifically they were trying to encourage more utility engagement with community-based organizations, or if the PUC itself had some ideas on how they would be able to coordinate with CBOs. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, on that last point, it's both. So we're trying to, and actually I think we could be a little more explicit about this. So we are at the PUC level are definitely trying to engage more with CBOs, but such that it can inform our decision making and our proceedings and programs and whatnot. So we want to have that direct access more and you know, be able to resource that in a way we haven't before. So we're going to be trying to make those efforts there. Currently, we're already within proceedings and programs, we require utilities to engage CBOs, fund CBOs, partner with CBOs. But I think we could probably say more about enhancing that practice so that we're addressing it both ways. So the utilities are doing community-based organization partnerships, and we as the PUC also partner with CBOs so that we don't just rely on the utilities to do that. So we have our own ability to have that feedback loop happen for us and inform our decision making. So I think you would see it. I think you would see it happen in both spaces, but we can be a little more explicit about that. I think in the plan. I don't know if I answered your first question, so feel free to repeat it if I didn't get it. But that was at least my answer to the second question.
Sure. We do still have 2 hands up. We do want to get back on time, though. We will have another comment time in a couple minutes. So I'm gonna, if you want to leave your hands up for the next session, that we will call on you if you have your hand up now first. But in the meantime, Monica, go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. Just want to make a little bit of time here to hear from our ESJ liaisons. So like we've mentioned, we have a liaison in each of the divisions. They were supposed to go 30 minutes ago, so I really appreciate them staying on and everybody just bearing with us. But just want to give them a minute or two to just shout out who they are, the work that they do, and how their division kind of looks at this, so we can hear a little bit more from the division specifically. So maybe we'll go Anne first, and then Steve, and then Phil.
Thanks, Monica. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ann Kim. I'm a senior analyst for resilient communities with access and functional needs. And my daily work focuses, to the previous caller's point, on collaborating with representatives of individuals and communities with access and functional needs to understand the range of emergent policy needs, advising decision makers on related commission decisions, and ensuring compliance with those decisions. This includes my work on public safety power shutoffs, the Capital Collaborative on race and racial equity, environmental and social justice action plan, CPUC accessibility work guides, and more. My work directly nurtures policies with environmental and social justice in 3 ways. 1, my policy work directly furthers progress for environmental and social justice communities in many proceedings, which I can go into. 2, my core training enables me to perform data analysis that furthers equitable policies. And 3, the team effort with core amplifies equitable policies by integrating tools into updated plans such as the Environmental and Social Justice Action Plan, and how our colleagues do regulatory policy work. As far as our division, Safety Policy Division's commitment to environmental and social justice is twofold. One is making California's climate change scenarios more accessible to all, especially as it relates to utility infrastructure impacts and their ramifications for our fellow inhabitants. 2 is collaborating with AFN representatives to better understand key issues, serve their needs in utility safety policies, and verify a level of efficacy in implementation. Please feel free to follow up and ask questions by emailing esjaactionplan@cpuc.ca.gov, and I'm sure I'll receive any specific questions you may have. For instance, defining what access and functional needs includes, because it's 12 different subpopulations, including folks who are low income, which dovetails precisely with environmental and social justice communities. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Steve, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am here. Thanks. Um, my name is Steve St. Marie, and I work in the water division of the CPUC these days, though I have worked in other divisions over time. And I'd like to highlight the work that I'm doing on the low income water proceeding, which is a particular docket, but it's been a one of long standing. It was started in 2017 and it's ongoing. And its relationship to Goal 3, specifically of the ESJ, pardon me, action plan. Basically, regulating rates and terms and conditions of service for public utility service takes excess profits out of the cost of water service or any utility service that we regulate. And it leads utilities to be able to provide nearly universal service, including avoiding discrimination among customers, which is something that public utilities weren't able to do when they were strictly government-related utilities. But all customers benefit from that action of the CPUC. But in addition, the legislature and the commission have acted to provide even lower rates for low-income customers. And that's the central aspect of this particular proceeding that I'm working on. This proceeding is related to reviewing the low-income programs of the water utilities and trying to make those programs more efficient and better and more accessible to more customers, et cetera. And it's also been looking at issues related to the COVID pandemic and the problem that more customers have had problems paying their bills during the COVID time because of various issues, including losing their jobs, et cetera, and assisting customers that are unable to pay their water bills. So that's one example of how the CPUC is working to promote ESJ in this area. Throughout the water division, every proceeding, we are looking at ESJ aspects of it. Thank you very much. You're muted, Monica. We're not hearing you.
Sorry, here we go. And then Phil, if you want to chime in.
I was almost ready to just jump in. So my name is Philip Morris. I work for the Climate and Equity Initiatives team in the Energy Division. My primary responsibilities involve interagency coordination and coordination of the Energy Division aspects of the ESJ Action Plan. If you look at the plan, approximately 2/3 of the goals actually relate to Energy Division. It's a significant chunk of the plan. And Energy Division team members are keenly aware of the impacts of energy policy on equity and affordability, particularly as we move towards a clean energy future set forth in SB 100. Our overarching goal, of course, is to integrate equity at all levels of the process. But the range of activities within Energy Division is pretty significant. For example, the safe and affordable gas system transition, creating accessible transportation electrification that reaches all income strata in California, piloting dynamic rate structures that can support the integration of distributed energy resources, such as those electric vehicles, to increase resilience and reduce the growth of rate base, which drives bill costs. And bill costs are clearly a huge equity issue in our state. I would like to highlight a couple efforts that are ongoing at the moment that I think are particularly salient to the ESJ Action Plan. One is the energy efficiency team's equity segment work with the California Energy Efficiency Coordinating Committee to define equity indicators and metrics. Always a challenge within this space, but the goal is to enable better equity-oriented program design and evaluation so we can get more bang out of the ratepayers' buck for equity goals. I highly recommend anybody who's interested to check that out at the final report of that project at the caeecc.org site as well. Another effort that's going on is from the Integrated Distributed Energy Resource Team, which is working on harmonizing equity measures and simplifying how Californians interact with customer-facing equity-serving programs. which is a big challenge. If there's a panoply of programs, but you can't tell which one's the right one, how do you really get all you can out of the system? And so we're working to solve that as well. I, again, recommend and hope that you'll reach out to me by way of the same email address which was given before. And I'm sure Monica will repeat it a few times. But thank you.
All right, thanks so much, and appreciate you all three being here. And I think there are some other of our ESJ liaisons on the line, but just wanted to demonstrate that, you know, we're working on this across all fronts at the PUC, and just really grateful for Anne and Steve and Phil and their leadership within their divisions, and as well as the rest of our liaisons. So just quickly, I know we're like out of time, and John, I know we're, you know, we got to wrap up and have some follow-up, but I just want to let folks know, you know, the last few slides are going to be about our timeline, and like what was mentioned, there's likely going to be some shifting of it. The original plan was to have comments due on the, so this is not a proceeding, so you don't have to be a party, there's nothing like that. You can submit comments via email. You can throw them right in an email if you want. You can have a PDF document, however you want to submit comments. Any and all comments are welcome via email. And the email address is esjactionplan@cpuc.ca.gov. Again, esjactionplan@cpuc.ca.gov. And again, we'll accept comments in any form or fashion on the plan. Original deadline was going to be Friday, November 19th. We'll look at updating that and informing all of you. We'll make sure that's on our website, social media, and we'll make sure we send it out via the same channels we advertise this, so everybody here gets that down the road. And we'll also look to repeat this webinar. It looks like perhaps exactly a week from today, and we'll confirm that down the road. But the plan is we'll receive comments, we'll make some adjustments to the plan, and go to the commissioners with a final plan, hopefully the first of the year. And then again, we'll be trying to keep you all updated as we implement the actions that we vote out. So that's kind of it on my end. John, I don't know if you want to take any of the last questions or wrap up here, and we'll follow up via email with some of the changes we've talked about.
Correct. Yeah, I will take our last two questions. Again, if you're on the phone and you want to raise your hand for questions, go ahead and hit, I believe it's star 3, star 6, star 3, got it right first time. Also, again, apologize for the technical issues. We had IT on and checking the status. Everything seems to be set up correctly, which means there is some issue that we can't figure out. Anyone who was on this list who registered for this before, we will send a re-invite because we have your emails from when you registered for when this is scheduled. Again, tentatively for a week from today at the same time. And again, if you can't make that, or you just want a preview and you want the slides from today, please email me at john.baker@cpuc.ca.gov and I will send you a copy. So to our callers, thanks for waiting. Our first caller would be a 415-997 number.
May have been an earlier one, yeah.
Yeah, it might have been earlier. We'll come back just if they still up. So we'll go to 2.
Yeah, that was just my hand raised from earlier. I didn't have a follow-up question. My original question was, though, if there was any more details on the collaboration efforts or the pilot program to work more closely with community-based organizations. I understand if it's still a work in progress, but if you had any, details you could share, that would be appreciated.
Great, yeah. Soon, we think soon we'll be able to, there will be a public process, hopefully, to inform what a CPO grant program type thing could look like. So hopefully in the next couple of months, folks will be seeing sort of an introduction to a public conversation about that. So no meat on the bones there yet, but coming soon. And I'm glad that, yeah, please keep an eye out for it, because we'll be looking for additional sort of more in the weeds feedback on what something like that could look like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next caller, which is a 453 number. Go ahead. Oops.
Hi, this is Fabiola, Senior Equity Policy Manager with the Center for Sustainable Energy. Just wanted to thank staff for being receptive to participants' comments about the lack of access or the issues of access today. And we appreciate that you'll be rescheduling a webinar so more folks can attend, and also for extending the comment deadline. So I just wanted to say that yes, technology has hiccups, as we all know. So thanks for providing another platform for folks to contribute feedback.
You and 619-726 number. Go ahead. I just sent the unmute request to 619-726.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you now.
Okay, hi. I'm Sonia Robinson, and definitely echo many of the comments today in regards to the inability.
They got remuted.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Something got pushed, I think. Go ahead.
Yes, I definitely echo the comments as far as the lack of accessibility, specifically when the topic is environmental and social justice, accessibility and equity, matters as far as getting the input from our public. I definitely wanted to share that I support the decision in rescheduling in order to get the engagement of the public. I think that's very, very important, as well as having the page number even shared for those that only have accessibility via audio kind of helps if that's possible too. So we know like what page on what slide that the presentation is being shared for those that are participating via the WebEx. I think that's also helpful. Outside of that, I was wondering is in regards to the clean energy and solar efforts, if the different for that, and I know that this plan also really focused strongly also on the water as well. And so I was just wondering if the actual monitoring of the air index and things of that nature will also be included for implementing the program and the plan. Thank you.
Yeah, so hopefully I'm understanding correctly the specifics. So yeah, there are specific action items that are linked to particular proceedings and whatnot. There is a couple that look at air quality a little bit or hit at air quality in different proceedings. So there's some action items in there about that. But they're all within the context of, I think, existing proceedings. So I may need a little more context for your question, but I'm happy to follow up offline too. And we can, if there's a need to add something more specific, we can look at that too. But yeah, hope there's a couple that hit air quality.
Thank you. And I also, if I may, take this chance, since again, we're talking about, environmental, social justice, and equity, is also, there's been, unfortunately, a pattern at the PUC when it relates to the intervener compensation claim. And so I was wondering if anyone has an idea for those that have been outstanding for like 2 years or longer. I think like 2018 is a claim that's still outstanding based on the report from July 6th of 2021. If there's actually a plan in resolving and addressing the outstanding claims, because the majority of the claims is outstanding on that list, they do seem to be the environmental and social justice organizations. And so just curious for the PUC's plan in addressing the backlog of intervening compensation claims, and if there's a plan to address that.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the commissioners, but I have heard them, this has
Sure.
been a big priority for, I know at least President Batcher in terms of really addressing the backlog of intervenor compensation claims. And there's been sort of administrative efforts to try to speed up the backlog, but you're absolutely correct. There is a very big backlog. And the only thing that in terms of the ESJ action plan where we're going to try to get at this is we want to do an evaluation of the intervenor compensation program. Because we have, the BCO team here on the line, the outreach liaisons, we all have a lot of anecdotal and information and experiences that are real, that we know are real with challenges with that program. But what we want to do is actually get in writing and on paper, what are the challenges with that program, and also parse out what is administrative in nature that we need to look at versus what is statutory in nature that we may need to seek, legislative change down the road. So because right now there's just so much that we understand is challenging about that program, despite its noble and important efforts and the good that it does do. So we want to get a real concrete accounting of what those challenges are and address them, hopefully to get at not just the backlog issue, but also just the accessibility of that program in general. So
yeah,
that's
and
kind of how we're
I definitely would like to, participate. I'm sure many others could definitely, provide some input on that matter. And like, for example, one nonprofit organization has an attorney with X amount of years, and another organization that may have a opposing view has an attorney with either the same or less amount of years, and yet the attorney that is, voicing more in the place of the ratepayer perspective in their comments, their rate is cut in half, slashed, versus the other attorney's, rate stands, right? Or, same example with your expert witness, and, had various scenarios where expert witness, years of experience, just totally topple anyone else's, but yet their rates are adjusted and reduced in comparison to another expert witness that may take a position of, like, let's say the industry versus the ratepayer. So this seems to be like, those type of inconsistencies, but even more important than that, well, not more important than that, but just as important to that is that there's, claims that's been, satisfied in 2021, but there's claims in 2019 and 2020 that are still pending. And so I would love to have an understanding of why the claims in 2019 and 2020 have not been addressed, but there are claims in 2021 that have. Just understanding the rhyme and reason with that as well.
It's a very good question. Yeah, and I mean, again, our attempt to get at all of that is to try to get a wholesale look at these and where those pressure points are. Is it staffing? Is it just a staffing issue? We know there's staffing issues. Is that the answer to all of this, or are there things in the approval process that are clogging things up? So we'll look forward to exploring all of that and figure out how we can make sure this perspective like yours inform what those findings are. So yeah, we'll see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your willingness to address these concerns as well, specifically as we're talking about, environmental and social justice and the action plan for that too. That would be great. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was our last caller, John. And I just, to your point too, I think it was Sonia, the irony is not lost on us that accessibility issues are happening on a plan that's supposed to be about access. So, please know we'll be looking to make that up. You certainly have that commitment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll hand it back over to you, John, to close.
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you to everyone who put up with the technical issues. We do not know yet what has happened. We will be investigating, and we will do another tech check before the next time. We will send the invite for the rescheduled, again, tentatively 1 week from today, to everyone who registered for this one. Again, we will post the recording online. We will post I believe we will try and post the slides online as well. And in the meantime, if you need a copy, please email me at john.baker@cpuc.ca.gov. And thank you so much for putting up with our issues, and thank you for your interest in environmental and social justice. With that, I will go ahead
Thank you.
and end this meeting.